In 1969, they reduced the age of voting from 21 to 18. Had I been presenting a programme on this radio station, which didn't actually exist, in 1969, I would probably have sounded a bit like this, I would probably have signed it a bit like this, and I would have asked, how do you feel about the prospect of the 18-year-old in your life being allowed to vote in the next general election? 03456060973. I would not have said, because there wouldn't have been a phone-in show. But I don't even know how many people listening to this, I've probably just offended you if you can actually remember what the debate in 1969. I hadn't even been born when the age came down from 21 to 18. But how will this debate be different? Should this debate be different? Is it just the question of a needle nudging? So 21 was the age at which point a certain type of personality thinks, well, things are perfectly fine. Why are they changing it? And 18 is currently the things are perfectly fine. Why are they changing it? And tomorrow's 16. Well, things are perfectly fine. Why? I don't think they'll ever go lower than 16. Although I could probably... certainly in a sixth form debating society, I could probably muster up an argument that you should be able to vote from the moment you start secondary school. You're probably more affected by government policy when you are young than when you are old. Obviously pensions notwithstanding, but everything else, education, the military, all the workplace, all of those things. Sorry, I'm a bit disturbed by the thought of a world without phone-in radio now. I've discombobulated myself. How awful. That's a terrible dystopia that we've just conjured up. That would be, geez. So that's the question. What do you reckon? Why on earth would you not like this? I've got my internal alarm bell ringing. I don't like hardy perennials. I'm not talking about gardening, horticulture. I'm talking about my job. And that's why you don't hear us say, should we bring back the death penalty? Or how should we stop the boats? I don't like lazy, obvious questions that don't admit very interesting answers. I can sound a little bit snobbish when I say this, and for that I do genuinely apologise. But this is in danger of being a hardy perennial. Should 16 or 7... I mean, I can't say, don't ring me unless you've got something interesting to say, because everybody thinks they've got something interesting to say. I think I'm fascinating, and I bore you rigid every day. So, pot kettle. But I don't know, are there any arguments in this sphere that we haven't heard before? If we were being very creative and imaginative, you could begin... Well, you can't, though, can you? Because you could say, well, should there be a cut-off point for voters? But then I had the great privilege of interviewing Bernie Sanders on stage a few weeks ago in London. And albeit that he's not eligible to vote in general elections in this country, he's quite an old fella and he is as sharp as a tack. So the idea that there would be a cut-off point based upon the general population's mental acuity is possibly as absurd as arguing that because you know a 16-year-old who won't get off TikTok for long enough to read a news article, that therefore all of them shouldn't get the vote. Okay, here's the thing. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think that this is a wonderful, wonderful thing that will extend the franchise to parts of the population who are in severe danger of being completely alienated by politics. The only fly in the ointment of this announcement is if they don't do anything with it. If they don't actually see this as an opportunity to start directly addressing young people, making politics relevant to them and making policies that are attractive to them. Votes for 16 and 17-year-olds are going to be on the statute book by the time of the next general election. It means if you're 13 or 14 today, you're getting a vote in the next general election. What do you think about this on every imaginable level? What it does to the franchise, what it does to the electorate, what it does potentially to election results, what it says about society, and also what it says about this government. It's bold, it's new, it's fresh, and it is almost entirely positive. If you're thinking of ringing in to say you can't trust 16-year-olds to vote, they don't do critical thinking, they're not properly across the facts, I've got one word for you. Can you guess what that word is? Should we do it all together? Should we shout it out all together? Don't do this if you're at work or in church listening on a little earbud or something, or in a library. If you are a person of a certain age and you're thinking to yourself, I don't think young people should have the vote because they don't understand things. They don't do the critical thinking. They don't know stuff. One word. You know what it is, right? Come on. It should be actually painted onto the white cliffs of Dover. That's a warning to all comers. What a plague island we've become. If you think young people can't be trusted to vote because they're not across the facts, and you voted for Brexit, then I fully accept that it's far too late for you to give your head a wobble. But my goodness me, you've got some front. How many people voted to become the first population in the history of humanity to impose economic sanctions on itself because they thought that was a small price to pay to indulge their hatred of foreigners, or to boast about having swallowed the snake oil and lies of people like Farage and Boris Johnson and Dominic Bloomin' Raab? Oh no, we can't trust 16-year-olds to vote. How did you vote in the referendum? I voted for Brexit. How's that going for you? Oh well, it hasn't been delivered. It's been scuppered by Remainers. It's very important that people understand things before they form their opinions. Say the people who understand absolutely nothing. In fact, if there were any doubt in my mind whatsoever about the wisdom of extending votes to 16 or 17-year-olds, the memory of what the older generation did to our country when they were allowed to vote upon membership of the largest trading bloc in the history of the world should remove all reservations and conniptions immediately. Rob says, you'd have to be naive to vote for any of these clowns, and the 16-year-olds are incredibly naive. No fault of their own, like, he adds, suggesting that perhaps that text has come from the northeast. But I don't buy it. The problem is, you're thinking of a 16-year-old you know, aren't you? I haven't got one at home at the moment. I've got a 17-year-old at home doing a politics A-level, knows more about politics than many people much older than them, by dint of doing a politics A-level. You know, can talk to me about the Lib Lab Pact, which isn't necessarily going to influence a vote in 2027 or 2028 or whenever the next election is. But the idea that you can generalise about 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds seems to me to be absurd. And if you're thinking that that should be a barrier to casting a vote, you've forgotten about Brexit. Alan's in Lewisham. Alan, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's actually quite a wonderful idea to give younger people who still have hopes and aspirations and dreams a chance to at least think they're going to...
Oh, bloody hell, mate. Are you putting us on the sides that don't have them anymore? Those were the days, Alan, when we had hopes and aspirations. And do you remember dreams, Alan? Dreams were great, weren't they, eh?
I don't know, mate. You know what? I'm 40 years old, yeah, and it's just like... Everything for the last 20 years has just felt like one disaster after another. So it'd be nice if youngsters could actually turn up and be like, you know what, we're going to fix everything. We're going to make it all wonderful, and then I can retire knowing that
have a little bit of optimism. So get them while there's still optimism. Get them before reality and life has chiseled them down and turned them into cynical old misanthropes like you and me. Get them while they're young, when they've still got hope and dreams, instead of ending up with people like, I don't know, honest Bob Jenrick in Parliament. I like it. Any reservations? Don't forget what Alan Hansen said, Alan, in Lewisham. He said, you don't win anything with kids.
That's true. It's true. But no, I just think politics has become so stagnant, and we could just do with a little bit of a lift, maybe a bit more interest, because we had the lowest voter turnout in history.
I think it was very poor last time round. Yeah, I think you're right. I know. I like it. Anything that injects a bit of a bit of pep, a bit of vim, a bit of elan into the political landscape. Thank you for that. I like that idea. Actually, how are you going to engage the next generation in politics if they are excluded from it? And this could be a crucial election. And also, it occurs to me, I mean, is it actually going to work, though? So what you need now is someone listening to this who is 14, 15, 16. You need to get your parents' permission to ring in, I think, if you're under 16. Who is actually going to become more engaged in politics. And listen, let's not have an echo chamber. If you can see downsides, if you don't like the idea, and you can avoid the Brexit obstacle, because if your objections are based on young people can't be trusted to understand things, then I'm afraid Brexit completely destroys that argument. But if you've got a better one, then you're not just welcome, you're actively encouraged to contribute. Sam's been in touch. I'm listening now, James. I was 16 when that Brexit vote came about. I and many of my peers would have voted to remain. There is a notion that young people know nothing about politics. I can assure you that many are invested, and would have been the difference between us being in the EU right now and not being in it. You could be right. I mean, it was tight enough. Martin's in Newark. Martin, what would you like to say?
Oh, James, I'm excited about it. I think it's really good. I think that there's something very observable in the way that teenage brains change, where they are full of empathy.
Yes.
And although that can make them vulnerable, I don't think vulnerability should discount a young person from voting because old people are vulnerable too, and we don't have discussions about people dropping off the other end of voting. Once you're a citizen, so if you're finishing with your education, you're entering into jobs, paying tax. Well, you've got to be part of the conversation. You have to be, because you're paying in. You're part of the gang at that point.
Yes, and the idea that the things that are going to affect people and those people should not be allowed to cast a vote based on them is absurd. I got distracted then when you were talking about vulnerability. I was trying to remember where... Because the thing is, I watch so much stuff that it gets mixed up. So it might have been in a really highfalutin intellectual play that I've seen recently, but equally it might have been in The Equalizer starring Queen Latifah. But something I saw recently contained the correct information that our perception of risk is still developing when we're young. It's why, we do crazy things when we get the frontal cortex, or there's part of your brain that does risk assessment.
Yeah.
That is not, but that does,
It's like a massive firework display.
Yes.
For people up to the age of about 25. About 25 is when people's brains calm down typically.
That's right, yes.
Obviously, there are outliers either side. So, yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting time. That's why they break away from families and go and find their own social groups. You've got to kind of look back into the old animal that we used to be.
Yeah.
And I think we just reached that phase of life where it's time for us to take responsibility for ourselves. And, of course, everyone's going to be on a spectrum with that.
Of responsibility and understanding, and that would apply to everybody of any age. And also, I suppose if we were feeling mischievous, if anyone did make a compelling case for arguing that 16-year-olds aren't sufficiently engaged to have a vote, you could simply say, well, they will be now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be the zinger in this conversation.
And I think the only argument you can put against it is an argument that, again, should be made for people of all ages, citizens of all ages. We need more explanation of how our democracy functions. That A-level politics, I did it years ago. It's a really good course.
Same.
And it really helped me understand how things are organised in this country. But I feel like everyone should have that.
Well, they do something called Modern Studies now, which contains quite a lot of stuff on democracy, inequality, international crises, global trade, healthcare, those kind of things. I think you're a former teacher, so you probably know more about what kids are taught these days than I do. But I think it's probably better than it was when I was an A-level student.
I think that's certainly true. I just think it could be yet better. Because the way that stuff works is it's at the discretions of schools to decide what their PSHE component of their curriculum is. So they can kind of bend it this way and that. And that's partly a sop to private schools who do not want to teach anything about the body, let's say, and how it changes when you're in your teenage years. So, you've got a lot of leeway as a school. And I really think that it would be wonderful if Bridget Phillipson came forward and said, every single person, no matter the age, here is a suite of learning materials for you to teach yourself how our democracy works. I think it could only be good.
And then the number of people that still think Brexit is a good idea would be in the low single figures, presumably, because knowledge is power. It is. That was me, not Martin. I don't want to put words into his mouth. I'd go further. I think if you voted for Brexit and you still think it was a good idea, you shouldn't be allowed to vote ever again until you publicly acknowledge how wrong you were and identify who it was that misled you so profoundly and unpleasantly. Seriously, that's what I do. Unfortunately, it's going to be like Woodstock. It's going to be like the opposite of Woodstock. You know how a few years after Woodstock, if everyone who said they'd been at Woodstock had actually been at Woodstock, then it would have been, it would have sunk under the weight of all the people that were there. There's no earthly way. It's a bit like Spike Island. I did not go to the Stone Roses gig at Spike Island, but it's possible that I claimed I did for much of my 20s. I don't remember doing that, but remembering what I was like in my 20s, it is perfectly possible I claimed to have been at Spike Island when I wasn't actually at Spike Island. It was an interesting period of my life. It's possible I was at Spike Island and have now completely forgotten, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't. And Brexit will be like that by the time these 16-year-olds who have been given the vote are my age. There won't be anybody around who admits to having voted for that nonsense 50 years ago.